Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we have another video from Kato, this one talking about why the Forest of Death is peak Naruto. Now, the Forest of Death is one of my favorite sections in the entire Naruto series. I think it is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about this.
This might be a little bit of a hot take, but for me, the Chunin exams is when Naruto really starts to feel like the story that I've loved for the past 15 years. The Zabuza arc is fantastic, and of course this isn't meant to in any way disrespect the emotional heights of those characters and episodes. But when I think of Naruto, my mind immediately goes to the very first tournament arc I ever experienced. The new cast of characters, each with a cool, unique set of powers, different challenges, and finding out the clever ways a ninja could overcome them, and of course the absolute epic, sometimes heartbreaking 1v1s that would go on to define fan-favorite characters like Rock Lee, Shikamaru, Neji, and so on. But while the 1v1s go on to take the bulk of the arc and therefore steal a lot of the glory, for me, the highlight of the exams, and probably even all of Naruto, comes in a short 10 episodes or 19 chapters. My name is Hoodie Song, this is Kato, and today I want to talk about the Forest of Death. But before we get into that, this video is brought to you by our Kickstarter. That's right, we are currently running a Kickstarter for our new book, The Kato Anthology. The Kato Anthology is a collection of 10 short comics that have been created by the viewers of this channel, and in only 36 hours, we reached our funding goal to get this book a limited print run. The Kato Anthology is a celebration of storytelling, passion, and most importantly, our community. It's stories for you guys, by you guys, and it's an honor to see it be so successful so quickly. But we've still got nearly a month to go and a ton of awesome stretch goals on the horizon. If you have as little as $5, check out the link in the description and consider pledging to get a digital copy of the book. And if not, do us a favor and share it around. The bigger the success this is, the more chances we get to do awesome projects like this in the future. Alright, now back to the video. What does it mean to be a ninja? This is a question that's going to have a very different answer from an everyday person you meet on the street and someone who's into Naruto. Ninjas were a staple of pop culture long before the nine-tailed fox ever destroyed the Leaf Village. You picture the classic ninja in your head and you see a man dressed in all black from head to toe, sandals on his feet, and maybe a dagger or a sword in his hand. But by the end of Naruto, a ninja is basically just an arbitrary term used to describe any warrior. Stealth is sometimes a factor, but rarely. Deception, assassination, political machinations, not so much. Instead, a ninja Naruto is much more similar to some type of elemental mage than a deadly spy. And while roots of that were always prevalent in the series, it was marginally less of the case in those early arcs. This is far from an indictment of later Naruto. I personally enjoy the war arc immensely, and some of my favorite fights are the big bombastic spectacles like Madara versus the Allied Forces, Sasuke versus Killer Bee, Naruto versus Pain, the list goes on. My point isn't to necessarily criticize, but rather highlight an aesthetic difference that developed throughout the series' run. Remember, this is a manga that was being written in the year 2000. It's only natural with its length that Kishimoto's interests would evolve, even if not to every viewer's preference. But I think most fans would agree that when we revisit bits and sequences from part 1, there's this magic and charm to the street level, slightly more strategic, low magic feel that pervade every conflict. I mean, these three sound ninja were going to try and assassinate Sakura by putting a paper bomb on a squirrel. And even better, when they're forced to come in, Sakura reveals this two-stage trap with various wires and logs swinging down from above. It was gritty and calculated. It created this feeling that there was so much psychological warfare at play on top of all the cool hand-to-hand brawls. This is a feeling that I think is exemplified in the Forest of Death. One of the elements that this specific arc does, unique to most other parts of Naruto, is really test the limits of one's resources. Unlike the final exam, which has everyone rested up for a month, and even unlike the war, which occurred over the course of one day, I think, the Forest of Death is a 5-day event. And at this level for our Genin, 5 days of survival in combat really begins to stretch how far chakra and energy can go. Survival is in fact a great label for the theme of this exam's design. Part of what's so special about these first two exams is how they define what a ninja ought to be. Because
I think that, you know what, if you were to ask most people, you know, what exactly did they love so much about Naruto, I'm willing to bet 9 times out of 10 it's not going to be the giant Biju bombs, the giant Susanoo mech Gundam. It's none of those things. It's the street level, like he said, the sort of street level hand-to-hand combat, kunai knives, wires, paper bombs. The like he said, the planning that goes into everything. It's just there's something to that. It wasn't until the later parts of the series, mostly Shippuden, where you started seeing those things where you saw these abilities where they are capable of clearing out entire forests, entire mountains, and it's just, don't get me wrong, I still kind of like those, but personally, I just feel like, kind of like what he said. It's the hand to hand. It's the psychological warfare. It's the planning that goes into everything that just, to me, is just exemplifies what so many people love about the Naruto series.
Final exam, which has everyone rested up for, is a 5-day event.
I think we were there,
a
yeah.
great label for the theme of this exam's design. Part of what's so special about these first 2 exams is how they define what a ninja ought to be. Because the world of Naruto is so unlike our own, the role of a ninja is a little vague in some cases. Much like early One Piece goes out of its way to establish how a One Piece pirate compares to pirates we commonly associate with our history, the Naruto tuning exams lay out a very specific idea of the skills necessary to be a ninja and what role we should expect these characters to fill in the larger world. The first test, a written exam, was about 2 things. It highlighted a theoretically important aspect of ninja life, being reconnaissance and subterfuge, and it also enforced the do-or-die, courageous mindset that would be necessary for any ninja on high-risk, important missions to have. The second test was a simulation of ninja war. The previous Great Wars are constantly revisited throughout Naruto as a source of backstories, an explanation of current political climates, and ultimately a thematically potent message about cycles of hatred. But before we experienced war through Nagato's eyes or witnessed a mission gone wrong with Obito, the Forest of Death really set the stage for what being on the battlefield is like in Naruto, or at least what it was supposed to be, but more on that later. Immediately when we enter the Forest of Death, 2 things are set up. Through Shikamaru and squad having to hide from enemies within the first 5 minutes, we establish just how small the forest really is. Despite each team starting in different sections with their own individual entrance, running into enemies is something that'll happen frequently and at a moment's notice. Yes, the forest is large enough that you could probably avoid a specific person, but you'd be incredibly unlikely to go at night without running into somebody. This creates a permeating level of stress and alertness in all of the characters. It communicates that any rest will be short and deficient if it exists at all, which will come significantly into play later on when Team 7 is forced to take a break after fighting Orochimaru. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a group of enemy ninja plan an ambush on Kiba's squad only to be overtaken by disturbingly huge leeches that detect body heat and attack in groups. All it takes is a couple minutes before you've been completely wiped out by a force of nature. Not only are you in a small forest with enemies at all angles around you, the very earth itself is a threat. These 2 facts in tandem establish that the Forest of Death is going to be a dangerous, 5-day-long test of one's abilities to survive against all odds. It simulates what was necessary for ninja in recent history, engaging in grueling trench warfare in settings just like this. If I could summarize the Forest of Death in 2 words, it would be exhausted desperation. And a sequence that I think encapsulates that incredibly well is one of the most memorable fights in the entire show. A battle that would give our Uchiha his legendary curse mark and set him down a path for power that would frame the narrative for the next decade. Sasuke versus Orochimaru. The undeniable fact about
One of my
most
favorite
series,
fights in the
including
series.
Naruto, is that we all have a pretty good idea that our main characters aren't just going to randomly die in the middle of an arc with no emotional or narrative climax to be had. In the Forest of Death, when Naruto and Sasuke start fighting against this random ninja who other characters are hyping up to be some legendary, dangerous killer, we don't really think they'll die. But even in knowing that, there's still the question left of how they'll manage to survive. Despite not knowing much about Orochimaru at this point in the story, it's explicitly clear that he is much, much, much stronger than all of Team 7 combined, especially without Kakashi around. Before their fight even begins, Sasuke and Sakura are almost paralyzed by the sheer bloodlust exuding from Orochimaru's glare. The intense aura is only barely shaken off through pain when Sasuke is forced to physically stab himself in the leg with a kunai. Team 7 has been outclassed before. The very first arc had them diving headfirst into a mission way above their ranking and nearly dying to Zabuza and Haku. But despite that experience, Orochimaru makes his mark on the characters as an entirely different beast. I find this moment where Sasuke desperately fends off a giant snake to be chilling. An elite rookie, almost always composed and cool, is shuddering in fear. Sasuke is shook to his core after only a brief stare down with his opponent, making it clear that we are on a different level now. Watching this fight, it is clear how fruitless every attempt at winning seems to be. No matter what clever strategy, no matter what hype reversal, Orochimaru refuses to die and consistently gets the better end of our main characters. This moment where Naruto holds off the snake and saves Sasuke's life feels like the moment where the fight should start to go in their favor. And yet immediately afterwards, Orochimaru locks away Naruto's Nine Tails chakra and knocks him out for the remainder of the fight. And despite the absolute epic display of taijutsu and wire work from Sasuke, Orochimaru remains practically unharmed. This is a ruthless battle that showcases Naruto and Sasuke at literally the height of their current abilities, and yet every instance that feels like they should come out on top proves utterly worthless against such a significant foe. And the crazy thing is, this isn't even the most lethal fight of the exam, because while it wasn't clear at the moment, Orochimaru's motivations were far from killing his eventual Uchiha prey. What this fight did do was set the stage for round 2, an exhausted showdown between the Sound Trio and basically the entire roster of Leaf Geni. Remember what was initially established when we first began this exam. Over the course of these 5 days, you are in constant danger. Chances at resting will be few and far between. That early setup is now being paid off when Sakura is left alone to look after an unconscious Naruto and Sasuke. No matter what anyone says, this defensive trap by Sakura is awesome in my books. While it doesn't work out, the forethought and strategy she displayed were pretty intelligent, and it set the stage for an emerging pattern of our allied ninja making clever, cool attempts at defeating the trio only to repeatedly get shut down and hammer in that sense of desperation and danger. The Forest of Death sets this idea that war in the world of Naruto is exhausting. It's dangerous missions carried out by underqualified ninja in battlegrounds that aren't to your advantage. The odds are always against you. Your opponent will not be on equal skill level. The days are long, seemingly endless, forcing you to take food pills and convince your body to stay fighting. The Forest of Death shows us that war is hell. And I suppose this would make you think that when the time came and we actually experienced war firsthand, it would shake out to be something like what was set up here. For as draining and brutal the Forest of Death was, as a story, it was the exact opposite. The second exam kept you on the edge of your seat. It presented this gritty, ground-level conflict and had you continuously guessing how Team 7 were going to get out of it. And while parts of that remained true in the eventual war, mostly centered around Madara wiping the floor with everyone, so much still ended up being lost. Instead of weeks, maybe months of battles in the trenches, the entire thing goes by in a single day. And in place of wire traps, paper bombs, and small, clever outplays, we instead get bombastic jutsu revelations. I like a lot of the war arc. Even some of the things I just mentioned can be pretty cool. But there was an undeniable charm to the scale and tone of what we saw in the Forest of Death. It was an aesthetic approach to the story that got more and more lost as the years went by. When I think of the best moments of later Naruto, they're moments that call back to this very aesthetic. The beautiful taijutsu bout between Obito and Kakashi brings back the memories of this scene right here. Arguably, the best Akatsuki fight utilizes the clever Shikamaru strategies that were forged in these tuning exams.
In my opinion, a very, very underrated fight, Shikamaru versus Hidan.
I've been going at it on and off for the past couple of years, and in doing so, I've been blessed with this special feeling revisiting the older arcs. It's not just nostalgia. This stuff was important to me as a kid, but so were a lot of things that no longer hold up. The tuning exams, and particularly the Forest of Death, continue to impress me to this very day, and in a way that is wholly unique to its later counterparts. For its seemingly endless list of amazing fights, for its ability to masterfully weave tone and stakes, for its introduction to one of anime's greatest villains, I think it's fair to say that this was peak Naruto. Thank you for watching.
Is there anything else after this? No. Okay, so yeah, I mean, look, everything he said in this video, I think that most people in the Naruto fandom, including myself, would generally agree. While I do still like a lot of what was shown to us in the later part of Naruto, I think that a lot of people, again, like I said, do agree that it did lose what a lot of people kind of liked about Naruto. You know, like he said, it's the sort of grounded fights between, you know, these two shinobi who are living in this gritty, brutal world where it feels like anyone can die at any moment. And unfortunately, when we get to Shippuden, I feel like it's it kind of lost that, if I'm being honest. You know, and again, not to say that we don't get moments here and there where it feels like, you know, Kishimoto is once again showing you or reminding you what you loved, what so many people loved about Naruto. You know, like I said, we had the fight between, in my opinion, one of the best fights in the series, Sasuke versus Hidan. that fight showed you strategy. It showed you both characters utilizing their abilities in unique ways. Specifically, it showed you the whole. Interestingly enough, a lot of people don't realize this, but it showed you the nature, how certain chakra natures react to each other. Like how Sasuke used his lightning chakra nature to disable Deidara's earth chakra nature, and later on that does get expanded on when Kakashi is teaching Naruto about chakra natures. The earth, fire, wind, water, air. Well, I already mentioned air, earth, and lightning, and lightning. And it's interesting because Kishimoto did sort of hint that during the fight between Sasuke and Deidara, and then expanded on it during the training between Naruto and Kakashi, which I do think is a bit of brilliant writing on Kishimoto's part. But for the most part, I feel like it did kind of lose that, because it's just I feel like it's mostly when after the Pain Invasion arc, everything from then onwards, it feels like they sort of kind of lost that. Like Kishimoto sort of forgot about that and decided to just replace it with these, like he said, these big bombastic jutsus that can wipe out forests and destroy mountains. And then of course you had the Ten Tails, which is launching these nukes just everywhere. And it's just it does kind of suck. And we do get again moments of that, like the Kakashi versus Obito fight, which I think is one of the best fights of the series. And then later on, we got a little bit of it. Now, this was mostly in the anime, not so much in the manga, where the Naruto versus Sasuke fight, where it started off as this simple hand-to-hand fight between the two of them. And you'll notice, if you look at the fight, this clever bit of choreography from the whoever was responsible for that episode. But go back and watch that episode where it starts with a hand-to-hand fight, and you'll notice that throughout the fight, Naruto's constantly trying to pull off the shadow clone jutsu, but Sasuke is always interrupting him, because Sasuke knows that Naruto, it's sort of a little bit more annoying for him to deal with whenever Naruto activates those clones. And he also knows that because of his insane chakra reserves, that he can call for these insane amount of clones, which would just make him even harder to deal with than he already is. But then later on he pulls it off, and you see, yeah, this is why he was trying to stop him all this time. And I always thought that was clever from the animators, and something that I do kind of wish Kishimoto would have put in the manga. But I feel like, to me, if you go read those last few chapters, especially the fight between Naruto and Sasuke, you do feel like he is kind of sort of trying to rush through it. Like he's not really putting as much thought into it as he normally would. For example, like he did in the fight between them near the end of part 1. But anyway, guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Remember to like the video, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, click the bell for notification. Remember to stay safe and take care of yourselves. Bye for now.